Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sales Uncharted. Now, my B2B sellers listening in right now, I have a treat for you. I really do. I am actually so looking forward to this conversation. I actually met Celeste, and I met Celeste when we were back and forth on when I had just started off my investigation of how can I use LinkedIn to establish a reputation for myself after leaving the corporate world. So, anyone who's been in the corporate world, you kind of live in your own ecosystem, you live in your own atmosphere, right? After 30 years, when I exited, everything I had done, I had built up was around me and my company. And now, as an entrepreneur, I suddenly realized that I actually did not know the ABCDs of the fundamentals of how can I build my reputation on LinkedIn. And one of the people I bumped into was actually Celeste. And Celeste and I kind of had a great journey. I would say, Celeste, I dealt with Celeste for 3 months. And in those 3 months, I absorbed and I just absorbed so much of her advice and her guidance. Today, I bring her on board because I really believe there are tons of salespeople out there that I work with who would benefit from her message. There are many of you who use LinkedIn as a resource for identifying customers, reaching out to customers. And yes, many of us, and I'm sure Celeste would agree, get very nervous when you talk about LinkedIn because it can give you the most joy. It can also give you the most pain. Sometimes we get the feeling that we're like in this pool of people selling to each other. And if you're selling to each other, then who's buying? But the reality is that when LinkedIn is used the right way, it can have a powerful impact on your approach, on how you interact, and how you build trust even before you enter that room with your buyer. Ladies and gentlemen, Celeste, thank you very much for being here. I really look forward to this conversation. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to work together, and also it's an honor to be able to share my perspective and my story with people that find it useful too.
Absolutely. Celeste, let's start with your story. Celeste, what brought you into the work that you do today? What was kind of the thought process in your mind? How did it start? Give me a small sketch because I really remember your journey that you're explaining and the way you learned and the way you made mistakes along the way. But before we get into your mistakes and what you learned, if you could give me an indication of why this journey and why this Celeste today.
I mean, why I ended up here was mainly because I just wanted to get a job. And I thought that LinkedIn was a good solution. I got a scholarship. Then the guys that help us in the scholarship told us to start posting here on LinkedIn. But it was pretty funny because I was just applying to many jobs and didn't get to any good places. But then I just started posting and I got my first retainer clients just from less than 4 posts, which was crazy for me to think that just with a few posts and I was just showing I wasn't even selling. There was people out there saying like, "Oh my god, you have something." And just like literally they were in front of me saying, "Hey, just like I'll pay you. Just how much did you charge?" They were not even asking for the price. They were just like ready to work with me. And that really caused a huge impact on me thinking when you have good content and when you have a brand, there's a huge element of trust that I wouldn't be able to get, with cold VMs or with any other things because I mean, at that moment, I didn't have any, testimonials or social proof. So, like that element of trust at the beginning was just so big for me to realize. And I just
You,
started learning
you,
more about it.
you know, Celeste, as you speak, there's something that hit me again. I'm reminded of my first conversation with you, right? You've always been a very low key person. I've noticed you don't try to push very hard in terms of look how awesome I am, look how great I am. And I think that humility came through in your introduction as well. And what I want people to understand there is that she's actually discounting the effort and the heartbreak and the angst that sometimes goes into it. She also makes it sound so easy that she was lucky and all that. I assure you, she works very hard. She works very, very efficiently. And I'm going to actually push her on this a bit more to get more into that brain of hers to actually understand. The way I'd like to do that though is that, so there's a couple of things you spoke and you said you use the word trust. Let's just step back for a second here right now, okay? So I'm a B2B seller.
Mhm.
What does LinkedIn represent to me, the B2B seller, as we close 2025 and enter 2026? Is it a resume? Is it a brand or is it a digital first impression? And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely goes more to the trust and the brand that you have online, whether you are a founder, right? That I work with mainly with founders, whether you're an employee, whatever you are, it really helps massively to have a brand because then you're more visible. And then there is this factor of show, don't tell, because there's many people who like to, tell you I can get you from A to B in this amount of time, or hey, these are my cases of study. But what I've noticed is that especially with the boom of AI. Like I remember my family jokingly said 2024 was for real or cake, and now 2025 is for real or AI. So there's many people who are, because of many factors, maybe they have been burned out from buying services before and they haven't been worked because they're more skeptic because AI has helps, well, forces us to be more skeptical about things. This element of trust is just like not enough anymore, only with your words, right? And only by you telling, this is my identity in one single paper, like summarized in small.
This
Yeah,
this is so
right.
interesting. As we speak, Celeste, the choice of words on you kind of say allude there. LinkedIn is like a piece of paper that has a summary of who you are, which sounds like a resume. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you also use the word brand in this conversation. And I also think that you also said that this is a tremendous place where your digital footprint exists, and this is what people are going to see of you. And the show versus tell, I'm going to dig into that later a bit more, because I think that's a very powerful message, right? If the B2B sellers on this call are listening, one of the things that really frustrates most of us B2B sellers is the fact that, Celeste, every second message in my DM is about, hey, I just helped Uncle
Yeah.
Charlie get 30 leads a day. I can get you 40. I really see in your profile. I really think you can get more. And this type of pushy or salesy behavior is actually that. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted you on the call, because I know you lead by example in terms of how you yourself sell your services. Is position yourself. So let me see the light rather than force my face into the light. Right.
Yeah.
Now, let me pivot to something you were saying and then get into that. Right. There's one of your posts that I read and I really liked, which went kind of viral, where you said that, hey, guys, understand that actions compound. So a question to you is that, how does this apply to a salesperson? We do a lot of sales activities, and action. What is action for you? What does compounding mean to you? Give us some illustration of how your brain operates on that front.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you know me, I don't like it a lot, the approach of being super salesy. First of all, I think I'm not good at that. Even if I want to, I'm more of a content person. And that's like one of my strongest points. So from what I've seen, I have deals coming that I've talked with a person and it's like 1 year ago we connected because of the content and now they are there and they tell me, hey, I've seen your content, like I really love to work with you. And sometimes, that month it feels like, oh, I just closed a deal, right? But then if I really measure the interactions in my pipeline and then I see how many points of trust that they were built, like they got 3 lead magnets, they were in my newsletter for like 3 months, they joined one event, and it really felt like a super easy close when I was with that person, closing this high ticket deal. But in reality, like there was so many points of interaction and of trust that happened much before. So I think this definitely compounds because for example, I start building, sharing lead magnets. And then I know that, people might receive this month and I'm not going to close this person. But in 3 months' time, when I don't even expect that, they're just like raising their hand almost to say, hey, I
Correct.
would like to work with you. Right.
Yes.
And it's like this compounding effect because the more conversations you have, the more content you have out there, lead magnets that I give to people.
Silas, this is really cool, because this kind of leads into what I really wanted you to dig into this a bit more. When we look at buyers, there are various types of buyers. There's some buyers who are actively looking. There's some buyers that are just lurking. Even when I look at my posts, I was very surprised by one simple statistic, Silas, which is that the people that were typically commenting were actually not the ones that were reaching out to me for help. It was these lurkers, the quiet types that were reading my stuff, that were actually absorbing the stuff and didn't. I don't know if it's lack of courage or what it was, but I have a question for you. Looking at that type of behavior now, before a buyer typically answers, let's say, cold email or joins a call, what exactly are they looking for? And how can LinkedIn help a seller to position himself that way? You kind of opened the door already by talking about the fact that you are showing, not telling. You are also, taking actions which
Right.
then start compounding. Any other gems that you can share with us? Any life experience? Any one of your customers who's got such a unique story that you like to share with us?
Sure. So I think it's a combination of your content strategy, and you're absolutely right. Actually, a client told me that this exact morning, well, yesterday, and I saw the message this morning. He said, Celeste, I'm curious because I don't know how this is going to work if my clients, like Fortune, they are not founders of Fortune 500 companies commenting on my content. And I'm like, okay, calm down. Your audience is not going to comment. Okay. And we like really needed to go through this conversation because most people that are going to comment on your content are going to be, other content creators or people who create also content on LinkedIn. And for example, if I remember, many of my really big influencers that I love when it comes to business. I love their YouTube channels. I'm subscribed. I even have books that they have published. But
Yeah.
I was like, but I've never commented on one of their posts, right? Maybe because I'm just like not that active commenting on Instagram or not that active commenting on YouTube, but I do like their stuff and I always see that. So just to say that's really common, it's going to happen, and you should not expect to have your ideal clients commenting unless you're serving like content creators, coaches, consultants, or people who are like
Then
actively
correct. Then
interested,
you're
right?
right, and I think that's a very powerful message because I think there's a lot of people that are measuring the wrong thing. They do the right steps, but then they stop doing the
Mhm.
right steps because they see it and they don't see the traction because the
Yeah.
traction is invisible. And I sometimes I don't know how to explain it to you, right? So Celeste, I love this. This is actually going perfectly. Now, Celeste, I'm going to pivot to something which is very interesting. Now, you're a person that has cautioned me as well on some of my stuff that I was doing. Why don't you try it that way, Deepak? Why don't you do it this way, Deepak? Right? Now, I'm a salesperson, right? And let's assume that there's a salesperson talking to you and he says to you, hey, Celeste, I don't have this energy that you have. I can't post every day, right? How does a salesperson manage that type of low energy and create this aura of credibility by using LinkedIn? What ideas can you give? One or two simple things that you think can be a great place to start from without overburdening oneself?
Sure. So, first of all, you don't need to feel that you're alone on this. For I work with founders that have their teams that have to be posting, that have to be with client delivery, that have to be on sales calls. You're a salesperson, but I know like these founders do, either solopreneurs or might be doing everything or
Everything. Yeah,
just
correct.
leading their team like too. So don't feel alone with this. There's definitely many, many people that don't have the time but still figure it out. So don't just put time as the, oh, I cannot post, right? Then things that can help you, it's something that it's hard. And because it's hard, and not that sexy. I've seen that many people just, skip it and then they try to search for another advice. And then they say, what advice do you have to post more often? Oh, is this okay? Just forget about this advice and try to keep and find a secret. But the only thing that can actually help you is to batch content. And that's it. To batch create. What this means is you kind of reverse engineer what you want to do from your calendar. Let's say that this week my goal is to going to be taking people to my newsletter, and then next week is going to be, sharing cases of study to
Sure.
position
Yeah,
myself.
makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I just write that in my calendar. What's my goal? And then from there, I reverse engineer what are the post ideas that can help me achieve that goal. Right. So first I batch my plan. I plan what's like the thing we want to achieve. So then we create the content ideas to fulfill that plan, right? Then we batch the content ideas, just sit for, I don't know, an hour, as much as you need to really think of what type pieces of content you
Mhm.
can create to match that expectation or that
Yeah.
goal. You think of the format too. You think at the same time you think of the idea, you also think about the format. Is it going to be text only? Is it going to be an infographic? Is it only going to be a carousel? I normally mark it with an emoji on my content calendar
To
just to know
identify.
what,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to identify. Then you have the idea, you have the format. Maybe you are done for that content session because it takes you some time to think of the ideas, right? For a
Yeah.
week or 2 weeks. And then in the other session, you actually start writing, right? And you start creating the visuals and you start creating, finalizing the pieces of content. And the reason you do this is because if you are creating one piece of content per day, you're always going to be stressed out, like, oh my God, I have like 2 hours to finish this post.
Yeah.
And if that happens, the quality of your content is not going to be that good. So even if you post, you're not going to grow that fast. So that's one thing. You're also going to be stressed and you're going to hate your life because you're going to be
Makes
like
sense.
with your normal routine and then content. And then you're going to feel like you cannot do anything. You're going to quit one day. You're going to quit one week and you're going to forget about it months and months and months. So,
Silas, I have to dig in here because this is so much good stuff here, right? A lot of people would hear you and they would hear this as follows. Oh, so consistency can always beat motivation. And I think your message is very interesting. Your message is you have to be consistent, but the consistency is not on posting every day. The consistency is how you go about posting and thinking about posting every day. If you have created a batch process which allows you to think about posting on a periodic cycle, you are technically then doing the thinking once, but then
Yeah.
prepare for the next 5 or 10 days or something like that. And I think you're absolutely right. I would say 100% of people that I deal with, which is so surprising, Celeste. You would think that, Celeste, after all this experience on LinkedIn, after all this, so much information on LinkedIn, people still will write stuff at the last moment. And the
Mhm.
biggest noise I hear is as follows: oh my gosh, I'm late because my peak slot is 9 o'clock PST. I need to post 9 o'clock PST. Now it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to miss out. And this was one of the first learnings I got from you as well, was that, when you are batching, you're actually also going to be able to see, are all five of my coming out productions or my posts all text? But you know what? Let me mix it up. But when you're posting by day, by day, by day, you're able not to even see what is it that you're doing in terms of all these. I think you refer to as carousels, as infographics and different ways of. And I think that's exactly the point, right? When you are going to live in an unstructured, inconsistent manner of consistency, is not just about posting every day or posting periodically, but consistency is also about the mechanism that you apply, the structure and discipline. I think that's a very powerful message, and I'm grateful that that came up very early in this conversation, because it now sets the tone for how do we do this now. So I am someone that started posting, and I must be honest, Celeste, as I started posting, I was writing on everything and anything, right? Now, what I want to ask you is a simple question, and this is the guidance you gave me, but I don't want to regurgitate it as to what I heard from you, right? What would differentiate a seller who sounds like every other seller, right? But I want him to start sounding like a trusted advisor. What advice would you give to a seller like that in terms of how he should start thinking about what he's putting on LinkedIn?
Sure. So if you behave like you're only selling stuff and that's your goal, for sure you're gonna scare people away because LinkedIn being a pretty salesy place, and then you come here with only sales advice or that energy. For sure, you're not gonna see the traction you would expect, right? So that's for sure. And then something would be to mix formats, and that's been really helping me a lot because you might hear the advice to like you might hear, oh, create carousels are the top performers, or hey, create videos are the top performers. But the truth is that there's not a global thing that works for everyone. It's just what
Ah,
works for your skill set and your industry and the product, right? There's some products that are better to show on text, and there are others like software that really require you to show the software. And like when I do brand partnerships, I really need to tell them, hey, this cannot be a text
this
only. Like,
cannot.
I need you to show the product to people. Like it needs to be a carousel, it needs to be screenshots. So I also have clients who are really good writers, but then they struggle with design. Or they are good with design and they are really good writers, but they don't feel comfortable on camera. Or they might be girls, and I don't know, like I've got get clients that
That,
they
yeah.
come really late during the day, and then they have to prepare themselves and put makeup on, and then the lighting of the sun is not
That's
like,
a pleasure, Celeste, of me looking like this. I don't have to worry about any of that.
no, but
Perfect.
like no, definitely like and they just create so much frustration. But just test different formats to see what you feel more natural, speaking, and really show the true version of yourself, not just going, for what the metrics tell you, because
But
then you will be able to build this trust with people. And
yeah,
I've been having people telling me, "Oh, Celsa, you know what? Like, I saw your videos, and like I like the way you speak. I feel like I knew you." And from the metrics perspective, my videos in that format normally doesn't have, like huge amount of views. But when people go to my profile and then like scan through my content, they see the
then
videos.
they see. Yes,
And
yes.
then it's like I'm limited to speak through text, right? It's like short form. It's only like what fits on the screen of the phone. You should not scroll a lot to get to the end. But when I'm in a video, like more natural. And for some reason, that just connects with people that
In
reach for
fact,
inbound leads.
Celeste, I remember when I was working with you, right, and learning the ropes, I would come to you with certain notions of, no, I don't think videos would work for me. Or no, I don't think that would work with me. And you would always ask me, have you tried it? And that is a simple question. And my answer was no. And your question was, what about it that you don't want to try it? And I think that's a very good approach to people listening right now, is that you don't know whether you're good or bad on video. The best way to actually test that, and to be honest with you, Celeste, I used to think that I'd be bad on video, and video is actually one of the ones that works very well. At the same time, I'm now at a point where I can actually tell you which video is going to bomb. It's usually the longer ones where I'm actually just going on and was repeating myself. So these are the things that no one can teach you. You have to experience and learn it yourself. So if there's anyone on the call who thinks that, after the end of this call, Celeste has given us a golden tablet or a golden potion, you just drink it and wow, that's not going to happen, guys. There's still a lot of work that you need to do. Celeste, people like Celeste, people like Deepak, we are facilitators. At the end of the day, the work has to come from you. You need to be comfortable in your skin. And I think that's a very powerful message that she shared. You need to be comfortable in what format you choose to. If you are uncomfortable, that'll come through. It'll absolutely come through, Celeste. I agree with you. So, in fact, Celeste, I have one person who I religiously follow, right? And this is a fellow sales trainer. She only makes videos. Her LinkedIn post is just 4 lines. Her videos are always less than 2 minutes. And she literally will post a day. Whenever she gets time, she'll just pop up her camera wherever she is and says, today I was thinking of this. And she just talks for a minute, minute and a half. And I really find that very nice. It works for her perfectly. There she is. And now we look for other formats. She has no other format. There is no carousel. I cannot remember ever seeing a carousel on her timeline. So I was very intrigued. But I figured out that she has found something that works for her style. And that's a message that I would like to make sure people understand. You're not sitting here, Celeste, dictating what formats should look like. You're saying there's a world of formats out there.
Yeah.
In fact, there's so many formats out there that if you start with the format on Monday, most likely you come back to that format 10 days later. Right, Celeste? If you do one unique format, and even I have learned a lot. Now, Celeste, I want to shift the gears here a little bit, right? You know, there's this thing with formats. There's this thing with being gimmicky, right? You can become very gimmicky. You're throwing out a format for the sake of it. I think you've already alluded to it. If you're going to be forcing formats into a style that is not yours, or using styles or formats or things that don't suit you, then you are going to appear gimmicky. You're going to that message will fall flat, right? Now, how should a B2B seller approach this? What experimentation should you recommend that they should consider doing to figure out which formats work the best for them?
Sure. So that's a really good question. What I would recommend is really writing down the things that you're good at, the things that you enjoy, and the things that you don't enjoy. So you also try them. For example, in my case, I know like I liked carousels, but my designs were honestly really, really bad, and I couldn't hire a designer. So I had to
Right.
figure it out myself, right? And even though, at the beginning I didn't like them because it took me so long, after many repetitions, I just created a system that helped me to do it much, much faster. The designs were more decent, more like professional looking rather than the ones I was doing before. But really, like, just map it out what things you like, what things you don't like, and try everything. Because, for example, I got a client who said, Celeste, she had like a disability to be able to see colors. So because of that,
Okay.
like
Yes.
the sign was not really, like a good thing for him. But funny enough, the wife helped him to, like, craft some things, and they realized that was like one of the
Yes.
top performing formats. And like it was like, who would expect? You're really good at this, right? So just really map it out, try everything, even like the things you like, the things that you don't like, and measure everything. So there are going to be formats that will give you more views, but maybe they're going to give you less inbound. But it's still useful to match, mix everything, because you need to make sure to increment, the stage. So when you actually share your message and like, hey, this is the offer, you have a bigger room to speak to. So you need to balance in between like the formats that help you the most. In my case, again, videos don't perform that well in terms of views. But when I get inbound, I always ask, what pieces of content, what content did you notice?
Did
Or
you
yeah,
notice? Yeah.
it's like, oh, I like your videos. Oh, who would ever thought about that? Right?
Celeste, I have a question for you because I recall one of our conversations was about the fact that I expressed to you the notion that I'm kind of tired having to think about what to write. And you introduced me to the concept of repurposing. And for me, that was like, wait a minute. I thought that's what lazy people do. Would you talk about repurposing? And when you use the word repurposing, what does that mean to you?
Sure. So there's many ways to the repurposing. There's a type of repurposing that you take one piece of content that has performed really well in the past, and then you publish that again. You do not change anything. Don't change the image. Don't change
Oh,
the.
okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's the same, and that's why sometimes it's perceived that that's what you do when you're running out of time, because like, oh, this one performed really well last time. I'm just gonna
Boom.
publish it again. Yeah,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's one type of repurposing. Then the other type of repurposing that I like the most is taking a look at your profile and your metrics and identifying the posts that didn't perform as well as you were hoping, right? And
Yes.
I know many people, well, at least from my perspective and in my case, I really like to say, oh, it was the algorithm, right? And at the beginning,
It was algorithm. Yes.
like at the beginning of my journey when I was growing, I never felt that. Like I knew I was really bad at my content, so I always had this mindset of it didn't work. It's me. Right? It was me. It wouldn't. It was never the algorithm. But the more I started growing and learning, the more I felt that it was actually the algorithm. And it can happen. Yes, algorithms change, especially on LinkedIn. There's a whole discussion about it, but there's always something you can learn about those posts, right? So always
Yeah.
having that with the mindset of there's something I can improve helps a lot. So when I like to do content repurposing, I just like to take a look at the top performer posts. What are the patterns in those? What formats? What types of hooks I usually wrote? And then
Yeah.
for the low performer post, what did I set? Like what was not performing?
Mm.
The messaging was too confusing. In my post, the messaging was too confusing. I was including many actionable steps rather than only one. The posts were too long. I can say many things.
And you have said many things, by the way, because I just want to pause for a second there. Celeste, in my interactions, right? I like the notion, and it's a good call out that you made. That look, sometimes it is algorithm, but I also think you're also trying to say, but that's not the excuse you can make all the time. At the end of the day, if you step back and look at your what you've done, there are many ways to figure out, and you're so spot on. When I was working with you, one of the things I actually realized was, and I think you asked me once, hey, I'm going to give you an assignment to do. Could you do something? And I did it. And then you were like, did you look at the example I gave you? And I said, yes, I did. And you said, let me walk you through it one more time. And as we were walking through that, I actually realized you were actually focused on a single CTA. And to me, at that point, I felt that a single CTA or a call to action, why would I miss that opportunity? Such an awesome or such a beautiful post I've done, because I used to look at the post from my point of view only. And I said, this is such a lovely post. And your first comment was, it's a bit long. And two, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it at the end, Deepak. And that's made me hesitate a bit. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I realized you can have the best post, you can have the best structure, but you really need to, especially when you're repurposing, ask yourself if it didn't work or if it's something you like, what would you do to change it to make it work, perhaps? And I think that's where a little bit of honesty is required. Very, very. And for me, that honesty came because you have this style of raising the mirror. Instead of telling me that there's something hanging out of my nose, you would very politely just show me and say, tell me when you look at your face, do you see something, Deepak, that's different? And then I would say, oh, Celeste, why didn't you tell me I have something hanging from my nose, right? And I think this is the joy of sometimes learning. You have to learn yourself. You cannot.
Mhm.
And I think when I was working and understanding LinkedIn, one of the things that I realized was that I can come to the forum, Celeste, and have you explain what was going on, but it was more important to actually experiment and deploy. I still remember when you and I were discussing things, you would say, I seriously think you should structure it this way, this way, this way. And a week later, I told you, yes, I did all that. And you're like, how did you, what, already? I'm like, yes. And I've already learned so much. Then you and I were once having a conversation and you said, hey, if you get virtual assistants, this is how you should get it. We were discussing that. And then 2 weeks later, I told you, I just hired two virtual assistants. And you're like, what, already? And
Yeah.
I think that's what I was doing very fast, very quick, is that I would say, and to be honest, when I was looking at my metrics, Celeste, in those 3 months, we went from, I would say, I must have added at least 5 or 6,000 followers. I also had some of the best posts that went through the system. And after that, I actually got more courage to actually keep
Mm,
experimenting. And I think that was a very powerful metaphor, right? It's not about figuring out what works all the time, but it's about having the courage to keep continuously figuring out, even when you think you've hit success.
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you, if you follow and listen very carefully to some of the teachings that the guys on this forum do, particularly the way that Celeste works, right? Is to how do you actually break through the so-called. At one point, Celeste, I used to believe that if I got 20 comments, I was like jackpot. Now when I get 20 comments, I'm sitting there thinking, must have done something bad today because I'm looking for 30,
Yeah.
40 now. So it's one of those journeys, right? Celeste, I want to pivot to something because you have a certain stylistic way of teaching, which is that I've made errors. And let me show you an open error. And one of your posts I did very well was the very once you spoke about how you lost a 3K deal from a missed DM. Could you please
Mm,
tell us the learning from that? Because I thought it was very powerful learning for me, at least, because I'm a sales trainer and a coach. And speed and responsiveness is sometimes very important.
yeah.
What is that one piece of advice you'd like to give to a seller on the call right now who wants to understand how important it is to have urgency in their activities and actions, especially when dealing with LinkedIn and LinkedIn TMs?
Sure. So in this scenario, like it was something that happened to me when I was still learning business, right? And learning about the skills I should prioritize. And this was an inbound lead. She was really, like kind of excited to team up together to learn more information. I was sharing to hear, like the details. But because I was too focused on the content creation only, right? And I was like overwhelmed because at that moment I didn't have systems. I was like, oh,
Yes.
my post for tomorrow, right? This type of thing that is not good.
Yeah.
Um, I missed her DM, and also like the inbox on LinkedIn was like kind of pretty messy. So I lost her DM, and that could have been like a deal that I would have closed if I just would have answered faster, right? And there's this speed to lead concept that you mentioned previously, that the faster you reply to the lead, the more chances you have to close a sale. And this is like universal. You can search it, right?
My,
And
so
also,
Celeste, this is so I'm sorry, I think I cut you off, but this is a very important and powerful message out there, right? Because I speak to a lot of rock star salespeople, and the first thing they tell me that I like to take all my conversations outside of my DMs because my DMs are and someone used the word cesspool. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he says, so I said, why is it a cesspool? I'm just curious. And he says, because everyone's trying to send messages to. I said, I have a question for you. How can you lose a message that you initiated? You did an outreach to someone and they replied, and that outreach got lost with all the other noise. That means that you maybe most likely are missing a system or a thought process has gone wrong. You need to be actively working on that. And that can only happen, Celeste, and it's happened to me also. The same experience you had is when you lack a system or a structure, or when you are creating so much noise, or you're so focused on one aspect of the business, but you're ignoring the other aspect, which is
yeah,
when the response comes back out. And I think this is something I also learned quite a lot. How do you bring balance across? And I think one of the conversations you had was you had this triangle of pain or something, and I can't recall it now, that you were talking about. And now what I want to do though is, there's so much, I'm looking at the time also because there's so many gems I'm going to get still from you, I'm very sure of it. If I were to switch to AI, and if I were to talk about what's AI doing when it comes to LinkedIn comments, LinkedIn writing, and stuff like that, what is your biggest concern with where we are with AI, and how do you recommend people listening on this podcast should use AI in the way that they approach LinkedIn usage or creating this trust on LinkedIn?
sure. So that it's a really, I also like, it's a sensitive topic because many people, like some people would be like, that's not ethic. And like I don't like reading anything that's AI generated. It just doesn't feel real. And then other people would be like automating everything because they feel they don't have enough time, and if you just automate, posts will go out. Now my perspective on this is that yes, if you give me 30 minutes, I can give you 10 posts with AI. But the problem is that I cannot guarantee you that those posts are gonna perform, and like everyone can give you that. So there's people who say like, oh, like 10 minutes, have this 5 posts. Of course they are not lying, but what they're not saying is that it's just not going to work. That content is not going to connect with people. So anything that is like automated content, I don't recommend it, and that's, I'm not a big fan of it. Also, automating comments in the DMs, when you start, especially, you feel like if you automate these DMs, no one will notice. And I actually got a person that I was talking to, and this girl told me, hey, you know what? I just started automating my comments, and I'm just saving so much time, but I still don't understand why it's not working. Like, can you help me? I think it's my content. And I was like, really? The problem is that people are noticing these are, like AI comments. But because you're a beginner, you're just starting, you don't notice a tone of voice that it's really AI-ish. But many people don't notice. So she was like, "There's no one noticing that I'm using AI." But in fact, I noticed in 3 seconds she was using AI.
Yes.
Many other people noticed she was using AI, and for that reason, they were not really engaging and connecting with her message. So just like the way I like to use it is, I come up with idea with the concept, what I want to create, and then my AI army, the army that my clients also have, just helps them format a post. So you give the idea, and then it acts like an editor, and then it optimizes the format, puts everything at
Optimize. Yeah.
work. So it's like easy to understand and more concise to shape it. So it's like if I would just be having a Zoom call with my editor and with my copywriter, but I will just do that with AI. So like that's the way I like to use it, because in that way it helps us to keep the tone of voice and my insights more to what I would really say, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just like automating something that is just not going to perform. You can try it, but when you see the
I
results,
I
these
have had, I would say, mixed results with AI. And one of the things that typically happens with AI is that if you do not, one, make sure it understands your voice, it is going to absolutely take your voice and mangle it in its own
yeah,
way, right?
yeah.
And there are specific things that AI will always do. If X, therefore Y, then there's certain words that will come in. You can manage those words, but you'll actually realize, and I learned this the hard way. I went through so many tools, Celeste. In fact, during our conversation, you were actually very surprised one day when you and I were working, and we were discussing Condo, then we discussed Engage, then we discussed two more tools, and you actually asked me, what are you doing with all these? I said, I just want to keep playing around to see what's going on. What's going on. And I came to a very interesting thing that happened to me. And I want to just share this with you, Celeste, and get your opinion. As I was playing around with this tool, Celeste, I actually realized if I would have just commented, it would have taken me maybe 1 minute to 1.5 minutes of typing. But
Mhm.
when you use AI, you get the first comment, but by the time you've cleaned it up, you're back to 1 minute, 1 minute, to 15
Yeah.
seconds. So the question I asked myself is, so AI is a great way to get a starting idea, perhaps, right? It's a great way. Let's say that you are stuck with an idea, and I go to AI and I say to AI, hey AI, these were the four posts that I did very well with. Blending these together, what topics do you think we could talk about? That has
Mhm.
worked very well for me. It comes back and says, you know what? Last time you spoke about B2B sellers in finance doing this. How about now talking about a B2B seller in manufacturing that has a scenario like this? And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. You can get ideas to start from, absolutely. But to take that idea, fully automate it and churn it out, I actually realized I was losing a lot of my voice.
Mhm.
Now, AI has improved a lot. And you sometimes get one or two posts that'll pop out where that will blow your mind, because you look at it and you're like, this is even better than I can write. The answer is no, it's not. It's because you're reading it, and you are reading it in a certain way. But if you were to step back and ask, did it read you the right way? Usually it doesn't read you the right way. And that's where you need to now sit down and say, what is my elements that I need to weave back into this to bring it back into the conversation? And I think I'm spending a lot of time on that. The benefit of AI for me, Celeste, has been that it speeded things up, yes. But now the problem is you can speed up stupidity also. You can
Yeah.
speed up bad writing also. And you nailed it when you said you can get your 10 posts in 5 minutes, but are you sure that people are going to read them, or are going to people read them and immediately say, AI? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning, because sometimes, like I had a very unique test I did, Celeste, which I actually took three pieces of the same text. I wrote one, then I had AI write another one, and the third one was just flipped something else. And believe it or not, 50% of the people actually figured out which was the AI. In that
Mhm.
test I did, A, B, C, three options I gave, 50% of the people actually figured out that A was the AI generated one. And when I asked them, how did you figure it out? Only a handful could tell me, but they kind of knew. So you're right. This is a nuance. Asking people, how do you detect AI? And because they can't tell you doesn't mean that they're wrong. It simply
Mhm.
means that it's sometimes difficult to explain very in simplistic terms. Now let's kind of start getting some more interesting insights from you, right, Celeste? Celeste, a lot of B2B sellers will come to you and say that I'm super excited about LinkedIn. Let's get going. And then they're going to most likely vanish after 1 week, 2 weeks, and then you'll see that they're not posting anymore. What guidance do you have to people like that to get their mindset correct and focused on doing this? It's not just only consistency, isn't it? It's something else that has to be fired up. What would that look like?
Well, I would say it's consistency definitely, but just keeping your goal in mind, because I've once heard this quote that I thought it was amazing, that discipline starts with the motivation ends. So if you're just like
Yes.
motivated this week, definitely
Yes.
you're going to like be quitting. So what I would say is just start with something that feels manageable to you. Like when
Yes.
I started, I built my business to only posting like 3 times per week, and that was okay. Now normal advice tells you that you should post 7 days like 7 days.
Oh, I'm one of those guys, yes, who believes that's
Yeah,
normal advice.
and
Yes.
you should, right? Because the more you post, the more feedback you get. But at the beginning, that just felt impossible for me. Because same with when batching content. If you try to batch
If you,
content the first
yeah,
time, you will feel like it's impossible. You will sit down 1 hour and just stand up, not with 7 content ideas, but with two. Right? That'll feel awful. And then you like come back again, try to batch your 5 posts, and you'll probably walk away with half of one post. But that's just because it's a skill, right? So just to
yes,
start
you're
with
right.
something
It's a
that feels
I like the discipline angle that you brought in there, and I think a lot of people need to understand that. I always tell salespeople one simple thing: why do you sell? And they tell me, "Oh, I sell because of this reason." I said, "Cool. So why do you post then?" And they give me very flimsy purpose or flimsy rationale, and that's when I actually spend a lot of time asking them, "Let's get your purpose and the output and outcome you want from LinkedIn correct and firm. Then you will be able to sustain the habit. Otherwise, you're just going to blast something once, blast something twice, and if your intent or purpose is weird, it's not sustainable, then it will not matter. And you're right, sometimes you can have all the motivation and the motivation will end, and that's when discipline has to come in. Structure will always overtake at some point. Celeste, I'm going to do a what I call a rapid fire with you, right? Rapid fire is simply simple. I just want you to listen to a question and think of the first thing that comes to mind and shout it at me.
sure.
What's one behavior that every B2B seller should delete from their LinkedIn today?
I think you're trying to copy templates that you see online from guys in YouTube that they tell you they work. Now they might have worked, but I think that many people have already tried them. So you're just gonna look like
So
a
you're
copy
just gonna,
pasted
yeah, that's
template.
that's a powerful one actually, because
Figure
you're
out your
so
own
so
scripts.
right. You have to figure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Nami, one more thing. Let's flip this one then, right? So the fastest credibility building action that a seller could do possibly on LinkedIn, which requires no posting, what would that be?
To build trust, well, there's many really, like having a well optimized profile, having a decent profile picture, where people can see your face without glasses or anything, because that just really brings trust that there's a person behind it. If you want to double your game and you're not going to post, you'll have to go for the M's. So, not using really heavy grammar like commas and periods and M
Oh,
dashes, like
darn,
nothing.
that sounds like me because I love. Oof.
And then
Yeah, yeah.
just treating your LinkedIn like if you were going to write to a friend on WhatsApp, not using that heavy capitalization periods. Like you don't write with periods to your mom on
Yeah.
WhatsApp, right?
No.
So it's like writing one message one after another, sending voice notes on LinkedIn. Like to send voice notes, you need to download the app on your phone from LinkedIn, and then you can send voice notes. I often use a software that is called Condo too, that allows me to send voice notes computer. And I've seen some people that do videos. So they say
I,
like,
I, I,
hey,
I am one of those. I tried the
yeah,
videos and I even tried the AI videos as well, Celeste. And here's the feedback I got: creepy.
yeah,
That
kind of.
was it. Creepy, because people have seen me live talking, sending videos, and then suddenly in the middle you send an AI generated video. People can pick up very quickly. If no one knows me and I send an AI video, it might get through. But if you know me and then you see a video that does something weird, you kind of, so the word that they came back with that, Deepak, thanks for the video, but that was kind of creepy. I actually stopped doing that. Celeste,
Yeah.
Celeste, you just mentioned Condo. One of the things that I wanted to check with you is there any AI tool that you think you've used that you really enjoyed and feel that it might give a B2B seller an unfair advantage? Would Condo be that, or would you suggest something else?
Yeah, so Condo, it's not AI because it doesn't generate any automation, and that's important too.
No,
And
yeah, it's
we're
important. You're
talking
right.
here about Condo because that's honestly one of my favorite tools. I actually have my special code for so many times that I've recommended that to my clients. They just give me a code. So if any of your listeners wants to get something for free, Condo is not possible to get many months for free, but I do have one that gives you more than the
Cool.
normal. So you can just reach out on my LinkedIn with condo. Just tell me, and I'll give you like my code. But
So
it's not,
while you're at that,
yeah.
Celeste, while you're at that, you kind of beautifully open it up. Celeste, if someone wants to reach out to you and someone wants to learn from you and wants to understand how to apply some of your frameworks, how do we find you?
Yeah,
Where do we find you?
especially through LinkedIn. I mean, Celeste Yamile. I think we might be able to link it somewhere.
I will link it for you when I
It's
when the
yeah,
podcast comes out. I'll make sure that I'll tag you as well as link you back to it, and I'll also put in your LinkedIn profile link as well in it,
awesome.
Celeste. So that'll make it easy for the gang to reach
Yeah,
out to you.
definitely. I mean, that's the main place because there I share, like many insights of the tests I do through content. There's also the newsletter linked in my LinkedIn profile that you can find if there's like many other insights. But LinkedIn is where I mainly connect with people and help them and provide valuable content. But yeah, I mean, what I do from LinkedIn too when I'm doing VMs and the AI tools that I use is that I use Condo because it's much faster than a CRM, right? And that's just what I
Right.
love because in a CRM, you would be picking up the URL of this person, then copying the name, copying the URL, copying
You,
like the email. Then you are in your
it's
software, and
super
then
heavy to maintain something so simple. Yeah, you're right.
you try to update it, automatically, the tags and the pipeline. Well, you cannot you need to update it manually, right? Like the pipeline and everything, the stages, versus in Condo because it's specifically built for LinkedIn. That just helps you to manage everything kind of like inside of the chats, and you don't have to be clicking the CRM and then the person and then the link to LinkedIn and then the box of the messages to open one DM
Yeah,
and wait for
when
the
you do it like that, I can just see all my B2B sellers saying, "Oh,
yeah,
no, no, I don't want to do all that."
it's kind
I
of
already and they
painful.
already do all that, and they still don't get the benefit of it. And I
Yeah.
think from what I also got introduced to Condo with you, and I actually used it quite extensively. Then I kind of moved away from it because my business grew to a point where I didn't need to do that much condoing at some point, right?
Mhm.
But Celeste, what I want to do in wrapping up as we go, there's one last question I have to ask you. I have to ask you. What do you think is that one bad LinkedIn habit that you just wish everyone would stop doing because it destroys trust instantly? What would that be?
Oh my god. Well, it's really hard because there's many things. I will say AI comments are definitely a big thing because people think that, well, because the normal narrative is that the more you comment in other people's posts, you will bring more
You're
awareness.
right. The more
Like,
exactly.
there's people who just don't have the time, but instead of figuring out how to have the time, it's just like automation, and it shows. So that's one
I'm
thing.
with you.
Or sending automated connection requests with really bad personalization. And what I mean with that is that
Celeste, please tell me more because this is something that I remember you were also trying to explain that when you force personalization, Deepak, it always shows. And I think
Mhm.
this is a great question. In fact, I'm kicking myself for not asking this before, but let's make that the last question then. Tell me more about this angle on personalization that you just raised here, because I think it's a valuable message for people who are either using automation or scraping LinkedIn profiles, reading through it, and then figuring
Yeah,
out I see you used to eat at this restaurant, and I saw a picture of you with the family there 2 years ago. I ate there too. It was awesome. And
yeah,
they think that that connects them in some way. Tell me a bit more about personalization and why you think it's being done the wrong way and what's the right way, if there is a right way.
sure. So personalization here, what I mean like with fake personalization is that the normal template. Oh my god, I got this template. I can remember it right now, but I had this guy saying me this connection request, and then I publish it in one post. Of course, I blur his name and everything that he
Yes.
says. But I published that screenshot of the uh, connection request he sent me, and like everyone recognized that was a message all of them get at some point because it's just a template, like
It's
everyone
just a
gets. It was
template.
like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
hey Celeste, I saw you commented on Deepak's post. Wanna connect about topic because of X reason, kind of that thing.
X reason. Oh,
So
brilliantly done.
just what I have to say about personalization is that by you including hey name, I saw you in X person posts, that's not personalization, right? It's just a kind of fake. You're just putting the name and you're putting
You're
the comment like of this. it's something that you can
It,
replicate the masses. So each
it's difficult to explain, but it's like, Celeste, you saying to me, "Hey, you've been to Austin? I've been to Austin also." And then there's this very awkward silence between the two of us because we can't understand why that context matters anyway.
yeah.
You're right. I've got so many messages where I just feel sometimes like someone's. Perry's is a great steakhouse, Deepak, in Spring, Texas, because I live in Spring, Texas, right? Have you eaten there? And I'm like, well, you were okay till the first half, but the second half, no, I haven't eaten there. Isn't that going to be the answer that can derail your conversation with me? But let's see. Celeste, I'm going to wrap up now. I really enjoyed this conversation. We have got nearly 52 minutes of beautiful, amazing, polished, unpolished gems from you. I am grateful for you being on the show. I really wanted to bring you here because I think you have a very powerful voice, a very different voice, right? And I think that a lot of people underestimate or overestimate their capabilities in LinkedIn. And I think the reality is that at the end of the day, you sometimes need to understand if you think you're doing something well, you can always get help from someone to do it better. And I honestly think that there's an opportunity for that. So, any B2B seller listening who really believes that they would like to up their LinkedIn game or actually understand their own LinkedIn game, I think Celeste is the best person to actually say, "Hey,
Thank
Celeste,
you so much.
would you critique? Would you give me some feedback? Could you help?" Guys, seek. I always recommend to people if you're building a business and if you want to get to greater, always people get caught up with cost of service, right? Celeste, what people don't realize, Celeste, is that sometimes you got to spend money to make more money. And
Yeah.
that is so critical in this game because, no child is born and the parents look and say, I want Celeste to grow up to be a LinkedIn advisor. We don't know what that even means, right? So a lot of people see these roles and they can't don't understand. They assume that, no, someone's going to grift off me. That's not actually what's happening over here. LinkedIn is a complex animal. And to
Yeah.
understand LinkedIn, you sometimes need a what I call a Sherpa to walk you through the mountains that are LinkedIn. So, Celeste, I really appreciate the time you've given to us. I look forward to getting this podcast out soon to my audience. It's going to come out in the form of the full video embedded in a newsletter where I'll actually summarize this conversation so that people get best of both worlds. Those who want to read about it can read about it. Those who want to read or print it and stick it on a wall are welcome to do that. That'll contain how to get in touch with Celeste as well, gang. So thank you very much, Celeste. Take care. This is where I say
Thank you
goodbye
so
to you.
much.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.